stay home and eat all the freaking chips, Kip.
Napoleon, don't be jealous that I've been chatting online with babes all day. Besides, we both know I'm training to become a cage fighter.
Since when, Kip? You have the worst reflexes of all time.
Try and hit me, Napoleon.
What?
I said come down here and see what happens if you try and hit me.
All right, on the Utah Stories show with me today is Jeremy Coon from the Napoleon Dynamite, which I can't believe it's 15 years since the film came out.
Yeah, no, it's crazy the fact we're still talking about it, and we're all still really excited about it.
And so going back when I first saw the trailer for the film, or actually it wasn't even the trailer, it was like a sample film made by Jared that I think he used to get funding for the entire film. What was the impetus? You guys were all in film school at BYU together. Is that where it started? Right. And so what was the thinking behind that little film that initially sparked the bigger film?
So going back, so Peluca is a black and white short that we made for $500 in film school. Jared asked me to edit it initially, and I just really liked Jared, and I thought he was a super funny, talented guy, and I want to see what was up. And I remember looking at the footage and being like, this is the weirdest. So I remember the first shot was a picture. It was in a DI, and there's a pair of whitey tighties on a hanger, and that was like my first introduction to the movie, but it made me laugh. So we made that, and then I had access to financing for a film. A lot of independent films were being made in Utah at that time for about $200,000 or $300,000, so I had access to $200,000. And I know I didn't want to direct; I just wanted to produce and edit. And looking around, Jared was someone who I'd like. This is someone I want to bet on. Like he's a unique talent that he needs to have his shot, and that's kind of what we hedged it on, is that he and Jerusha, I think, could knock it out of the park.
So you went to school. You were in BYU with him, yeah. And I have to say I went to film school at the U, and I would sit through these honestly terrible student films. It was
about
like
99% of student films are terrible.
Oh man, and it was just like agony. And then I think it was just either while I was still in film school or while I just got out, I saw Peluca, and then I saw the little trailer thing for Ryan White's it's a World War II movie.
Oh, Ryan Little, Saints and Soldiers.
Yeah, Little, yeah, and I was just like, damn, that is really great stuff. And I was, of course, more blown away by Peluca. Yeah. Just the tone he captured and the characters and the development. What was going on at BYU, especially at that time, that was just creating this environment that was fostering talent so well?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing was that we had access to a lot of equipment, and if the faculty liked you, you got to run wild. So there wasn't a whole lot of. I feel you go to USC and like other schools, you can't just go make a film. You have to go through some kind of like process or committee, and like here are the films that are selected. There, if you were a go-getter, you could easily get access to like professional equipment and go shoot it. And those are the people that I think did the best. Is the people that. The hindsight that there's also people who could drift through the program and never make a movie, which is fine as well. But a lot of it was, there's the LDS Motion Picture Studio there, which also would process film, which was kind of unique at the time. So you could do it all there as opposed to having it shipped off. I'm not sure how true that is now, but yeah, we had like professional equipment that was just sitting on the shelf and it wasn't being used. You could pretty much ask a favor and go do it. So I mean that helped a ton.
And the professors were really open to all ideas, any genre.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, pushing the envelope at BYU is different than anywhere else in the world, but it also kind of, in some ways, kind of forces creativity, because you can't just go for the obvious, like, crude jokes. You have to kind of think outside the box, or how it's almost like the, production code in the 30s when, some of the film noir was kind of their way of, actually made the films better because they had to think outside the box.
Well, I think that was exactly it, because the student films I would sit through, it was when Quentin Tarantino had blown up. Yeah. 80% of the student films were bloody, gory, violent, F-word every other one. It was just like torture. And I think you guys had a limited palette that you could really work with. There was no swearing, right? It was
Yeah, I
just
mean, you
like
get a
your
dammer. I mean,
humor had to come from somewhere else.
I had a damn or a hell that at one point a faculty member had like an issue with, so I bleeped it out, which made it like 10 times worse because someone assumes that it's the F word. But I mean, I'm not actually against. I mean, it's just like, you know, all that stuff has its place. It's just I think you have to be really like Quentin Tarantino is very talented and uses it the right way. The same tools in the wrong hands. If you just keep hitting the same note, it gets kind of boring, like you were saying.
Mm-hmm. And then going back to Palooka, so it was basically you edited that original film, Jared and Jerusha wrote it, or was it just Jared?
I was asked this question and I can't remember. I need to go look. I haven't watched Palooka in 10, 12 years probably, but it's I know Jared and Jerusha were like getting together at that point. I think Jared might be the only one credited, but I'm sure Jerusha had an influence on it. But the problem is I can't remember at what point they actually started dating and got together. I can't remember.
And then so when you stepped in and said, I want to help you fund this idea, where was your access for funding from?
That was my brother. My brother was basically willing to give me like a one shot. Initially, my plan was I want to be an editor. I eventually want to get my MBA, so I might as well like go do a film as opposed to getting a job. I'll do that for 2 years because they want you to get work experience. So I was going to pitch it as like I'm running my own business, and if the film goes totally south and nowhere, then I have a story to tell to apply to MBA schools.
Cool.
Now a lot of it, I think always in the back of my mind, I always thought Jared was someone that I really wanted to work with outside school because I ran post-production at the student facility at BYU, and then he ran production, and a lot of times we were just sitting around talking because we had nothing else to do. We were just kind of getting paid. I mean, they were making like $6 an hour, and we'd just sit around and talk about the A-team, and a lot of the same things we found funny. So just as friends, we would talk about it. Initially, talking about a feature, because in Palooka, the Napoleon character is named Seth. So it's this John Heater, it's the same character, but he wasn't named Napoleon Dynamite in the short. But Jared had this character, and he's like, I feel like I want to flesh this character out into a feature, and I was like, run with it. That sounds great.
Was John Heater kind of friends with you guys too?
Yeah, all of us were friends.
One of your bros?
Yeah, all of us went
You
to.
guys were all in the film program together.
Yeah, John was technically animation, but we all had classes together. And like Aaron Rule, that plays Kip, is another good friend. He was in the film program at the same time. I mean, I don't think they'd be at the time. Neither of them were actors or looking to be actors,
Right.
which I always found. I was talking to Jared the other day, like when he told me that Aaron Rule was playing Kip, and Aaron's like a very like cool, suave guy, like very like the opposite of Kip. And I don't see it. I think this is a mistake, but I trust. Like he was just like he has to play it, and I'm like, all right, fine, I'm not going to put up a fight. And the first day he showed up on set, because Aaron actually got like real braces as Kip, like those aren't fake braces. Like he went to the dentist and got like real braces for the duration of the shoot.
Wow.
And once he had the braces and the glasses and the hair, I was like, I'm done. Like
when you see him in interviews and how he's just like this totally put together, very methodical in his thinking, and not a nerd.
No, not at all.
It's amazing, that transformation.
Yeah.
I mean, John Heater, he doesn't quite talk like Napoleon in real life, but the character resembles the person
the
more,
perm
right?
helps a lot.
Yeah.
The perm kind of brings that whole character together.
So what was the creation process of Napoleon from behind the scenes? Was there more going on between Jared and John, or was it just Jared's creation entirely, or how did that?
I'd say it's Jared and his wife, Jerusha. So he told me initially, we're like, all right, let's do this concept. Palooka's doing really well. You go do a first draft of the script, and let's just see what you come up with. So I remember getting the first draft and reading it as soon as I got it, and I think it was like 70, 75 pages, which is really short for a feature-length script. Usually it's like a page a minute, so you're looking at like at least 80 or 90 to kind of have a real feature. And I read it, and I was like, all the guts are here. And then he kind of workshop stuff. I remember at the very end, we just wanted some more funny moments, and Jared just went to like, I think he was keeping a diary or something, just like funny moments. And like some of my favorite moments are all stuff that was added in like a couple of weeks before we went to production. It's like the tater tot scene in class where Don smashes his leg, the steak throw scene to Napoleon's face. A lot of these are just like moments that didn't really, they don't tie to the story, they don't drive the story, they're just funny, so we just kind of like sprinkled those in.
Really, yeah.
Yeah.
That steak throw scene, I want to play that clip really quick because I want to kind of break that down, and because there's so much going on there, and I think it's just such a ingenious sequence of events that makes it so hilarious.
It's my favorite scene in the movie. I've seen
Oh,
this
is it?
probably I bet
I think it's got to be my favorite.
I've seen it
scene.
2,000 times.
Yeah, yeah. Let's just play it.
Back in '82, I used to be able to throw a pigskin a quarter mile.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious. Watch this.
What the heck are you doing?
That's what I'm talking about.
I better go.
How much you want to make a bet I can throw a football over them mountains? Yeah, if Coach would have put me in fourth quarter, we'd have been state champions, no doubt. No doubt in my mind. You better believe things would have been different. I'd have gone pro. In a heartbeat. I'd be making millions of dollars and living in a big old mansion somewhere. You know, soaking it up in a hot tub with my soulmate.
Is that planned in the script at all, like that?
Yeah, so it was, I mean, how it's here is basically how it's scripted, which
Really?
I always thought was hilarious because I
Oh,
like
yeah.
slapstick stuff. So we did 5 takes of the steak throw. John Grice is like a really, really good baseball player. Like he's a pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
So we had these steaks. If I remember correctly, they were almost like semi-frozen. Like they were supposed to thaw out, and they hadn't completely thawed out yet.
Jeez.
We did 5 takes. The first 4 takes, John Grice, who plays Uncle Rico, was trying to like underhand it or like kind of throw it in a way so it wasn't like really forceful, and it never worked out because it just looked like it was like the angle looked wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Would like fly in, would like hit him in the chest, and then the 5th take, Jared just told him, was like, look, just throw it like a baseball and let's go with it. So he threw like a baseball and smacked John Heater square in the face in the glasses.
Whoa.
And
That
John
was
stays
real?
in character and gets off of it, but like afterwards, like under his eyes where the glasses hit, he was bruised for the rest of the shoot.
Oh my
And we still had
gosh.
I think we still had like 2.5 weeks. This is relatively early in the shoot. And yeah, I mean, to Heater's credit, like he stayed in character, got in it, and like the takes money. I remember when I was there, like I remember I was filming with I had like a crappy like mini DV camera I was filming behind the scenes. And I remember being on set watching that like multiple times, because I'm like, this is just too funny.
Oh my god, yeah! It just nailed it. All the pieces came together, and what I like so much about that scene is almost everybody knows a guy who's like saying, "God, if I just would have been in the game when that moment arrived, and Coach would have put me in, we would have taken state."
Yeah,
It's
no,
like, where did that just come out of Jared's memory that he knew a guy like that? It was
I think, like you said, like we all know a guy like that. I mean, unfortunately, some cases it might be your dad. It's not my dad, but like, I mean, I think
my dad broke his leg. He was a
Yeah.
quarterback, and he broke his leg, and probably they would have taken state.
yeah, he would have gone pro. But I think it's just it's a stereotype for a reason, where I think every high school class has that guy.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
Yeah, and it just seems like also you tapped into a type of comedy that hadn't really been seen before. And I can only say it was a combination of tying into more rural people who are kind of just out of the mainstream, and nerds, of course, but not like your stereotypical nerds who are competing against jocks, but more like these kids who just live in their own world, and like the character who they've got wrapped up in their backpack is a figurine. That's a big part of their life, and then their drawings or suck them into this whole other world. It's like, how did Jared assimilate that character, and how did it come about?
So Jared's the oldest of, I can't remember how many brothers, but he has a bunch of younger brothers, and so he has culled a lot of that from his own family. It's like
really?
the chapstick scene really happened. That's almost word for word what happened with his little brother. I think he's just been really good at like remembering these and documenting them, knowing one day that he would, be able to use them hopefully at some point in a script.
Oh, so he was documenting them all through his
Yeah, I remember he had like a
childhood?
notebook where he would like write down just like random, like basically if like something struck him as funny. I mean, even the title Napoleon Dynamite, he was on his mission in Chicago and met a guy. He was talking to him and he's like, "Hey, what's your name?" The guy's like, "I can't do a Chicago accent," but was like, "I'm Napoleon Dynamite." And Jared's like, "It's the weirdest thing." Like, wrote it down as like, must make movie called Napoleon Dynamite at some point.
No way.
And I mean, that was, probably 3 or 4 years before we made it. But I think having that discipline is what really helps. 'Cause I think all of us have funny things happen to us, and that's what a lot of good humor works, because there's some truth to it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's not any truth to it. It doesn't really ring true and probably doesn't seem funny. It seems staged, which is why I think a lot of this works, because yes, a surprising amount of in this movie actually happened at some, like the cow getting shot in front of the school bus really happened in Preston.
Wow, really?
Like that. That's a true story.
And did one of Jared's friends or somebody throw a stake at a guy on a bike?
The stake throw, I think, was probably made up. That I don't remember, but it's entirely possible.
That's awesome. All right, we'll take a little break, and when we get back, we'll talk about the stage of the film where it was created and produced and how that kind of went down. This episode of the Utah Stories Show is sponsored in part by the Green Pig Pub. Located in the heart of downtown Salt Lake City, Green Pig Pub has this enormous rooftop patio where you can enjoy a big bacon burger, buffalo wings with fries. I love their chili verde nachos, chicken chinchoneros, and more. So be sure to check out the greenpigpub.com for information on their live music shows as well as their trivia nights. It's really a great place to check out a game or enjoy a date out on the town. We're back with Jeremy Coon from Napoleon Dynamite. And so what I want to go through now is, after you made the film and you had all these incredible scenes, did you know you had a hit on your hands? Did you realize that?
I mean, none of us, anyone who said that we thought this film would have been as successful as it was, is not telling the truth. I mean, we were all a bunch of 24-year-olds in Idaho just out of film school making our first feature, and our hope was just that it would play well in the Midwest to make its money back. So that was the initial goal. The fact that we got into Sundance was earth-shattering. The fact we got picked up by Fox Searchlight, and then on top of that to get released and kind of I remember it became a cultural phenomenon to the point where the point for me where I was like, oh, this is really, really big, is when we were an answer on Jeopardy.
Really?
That was the fall. That was later. That it was the next summer, and I'm like, wow, and I had a Trivial Pursuit card where we were a question. I'm like, wow, you've really tapped into pop culture once you kind of hit. At least for me, those were stages where I'm like, oh, this is really, really big.
Yeah, and so you submitted to Sundance. Obviously, that's the best possible venue you could have gotten to.
Yeah.
And then were you submitting to a lot of other festivals too, just hoping to get a festival?
We submitted
release?
to Slam Dance because Peluca had played Slam Dance the year before, so we had a connection there. But I mean, I was always on Sundance just because. There's other film festivals, but especially back in 2004. I mean, if you're in American cinema, independent cinema, that's the premier spot to play. Mm-hmm. And we just wanted to. So I mean, in many ways, it was literally we had no connections. I stuck it in a FedEx envelope, mailed it to the Sundance office, and didn't hear anything until the next November. So there was no because a lot of times there's people calling in favors and hey, can we push this? There was, it's literally, it was a cold submission.
Well, and it's a film so far outside of the mainstream of even what Sundance would typically pick up. When you were picked up and you saw the audience reaction that first time at Sundance, did that reaction that audience had tell you, was that a good indication that this might actually be a big hit?
Yeah, well, so I guess I'll backtrack a little bit. Like when we played Sundance, we were rushing to finish the film. So I think literally at that point, before the film premiered, like the film had maybe been seen by like 8 or 9 people.
Wow.
Of which it was like Jared, me, our cinematographer Mun Powell, because we're doing color timing, and everyone else we were like paying to do the sound and color correction, and they're not the kind of people who are going to tell you that your film's not any good.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was like, oh, this is amazing. So we got there, and like I remember Jared was super nervous because we just don't know, like, what if this is like a disaster? I was more just kind of like, well, whatever it is, it is. Like, we've done everything we can. I think the film's great. And I mean, Jared thought the film was great too, but you just never know.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it started with the opening shot, because initially when we played Sundance, we didn't have opening credits. That came after Fox bought it. So it just was a cold open, like fade up to Napoleon in front of his house.
Mm-hmm.
And there's that awkward silence. And people started laughing despite nothing going on. I was kind of like, okay, I think these people get it. The moment that really kind of struck us was where the dance scene where he does the school dance, Napoleon does.
Mm-hmm.
That was a nightmare to edit because nothing was choreographed. We didn't even know what song we were going to use at the time. And I kind of felt a large part of the film hinged, what we all did, on people buying into like, hey, this is like a climax. And we didn't know if we had the if it worked.
Mm-hmm.
So we played Sundance. We hit that moment, and like I remember the crowd sound in the film drowns out, and the crowd in the theater was still cheering.
Really?
And that's when like Jared turns around to me, he's like, "We did it, we got it." And to me, that's where and then just kind of escalated there to the end.
That gives me chills.
Yeah,
Just hearing that. That's amazing.
So we went from this thing of just like, being totally nervous, not knowing, to being like elated, to then just like not. I mean, it's almost like a dream where I remember the film ended, we got up there, did our Q&A, and it just all is kind of a blur.
Mm-hmm.
But we had our first 3 screenings within, I think, like 18 hours of each other. Because we had a 5 p.m. show, an 11 p.m. show, and then 11 o'clock the next morning.
Wow.
So we were going to know within like less than a day, like, is there going to be a bidding war, or are we just going to be like, sitting on our thumbs waiting for something to happen?
Mm-hmm. And then Fox Searchlight just came in with a great deal, and
yeah. So I don't know how many. I think we had. So everyone everyone I knew was interested. So they were fielding offers. Fox came in strong. I remember their thing was, which was very smart on their side. They had a film they had to go see at 6 o'clock. They came in, I think, at like 3 or 4 o'clock, and they're like, we're leaving with or without the film at 5 o'clock. Because we have this other film. So if we said no to it, it likely wasn't going to come back. And we always thought Fox Searchlight was the right home for this. They were like knocking out of the park on independent films. They're really good at marketing. I mean, the best at marketing, and they still do a great job. So we're already kind of sold on them. And I remember when the deal went down, we basically kind of like had this speed dating round where they pitched what they're going to do with the film for about 45 minutes. And then it was kind of like, all right, this feels good. And then we like went to a bedroom, and our lawyer went to another bedroom and would run back with like the deal terms. Within 10, 15 minutes, we had like the broad strokes done.
Mm-hmm.
Shook their hands, got in the car, and yeah, I just remember like, for me, I got really emotional because it felt like it was really weird. So at this point, all of us had worked on the film, but like I had gone from like producing it straight to editing it to overseeing all the post-production, getting it finished. So it was this, basically like a 2-year marathon. And at that point, it was kind of like, oh, we're done. It almost felt weird in the sense where it's like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing on. You're just exhausted, but also like, oh, I don't have to worry about this anymore. Like,
yeah.
we've sold this for more than I ever thought was possible. And at this point, we haven't even like the film. There's plenty of films get bought at Sundance for a fair amount of money that go nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
So even at this point, I was elated knowing that.
But you got your brother's money back, right?
Yeah, we all did really well.
Yeah.
Got his money back. The film ended up costing like $400,000. We sold it for $4.75 million.
Jeez.
We had other costs and stuff we had to put into that, namely the music costs, because I knew I probably could have gotten the music cleared for like $200,000 before we played Sundance, but I didn't want to pay $200,000 and have the film go nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
But once we got picked up, it's just like back up the truck for all these songs because we also didn't want to take them out. So we ended up paying.
There was a ton of great songs.
Yeah, so we ended up paying about $550,000 just for the music.
Wow.
We kept everything we wanted, but like, yeah, the music cost more than the entire movie.
Well, you know what's interesting about your soundtrack, I think, is those songs, the prom song. Gosh, I can't remember. What was the song again?
It's Time After Time.
Yeah, Time After Time.
And is it Only You?
But it seems like that song really made a comeback.
Yeah. Oh, it's Forever Young. Forever Young's the other one.
Yeah, Forever Young.
Yeah,
That's right.
Alphaville.
But like, and I think you'd always hear those famous '80s songs, but it seems like that this idea of playing '80s soundtracks to films made in the 2000s, that became a thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like the Alphaville song, I just remember from every like terrible like youth church dance I was forced to go to, that Forever Young played like every time. And I'm just like, to me, this embodies like that awkward, terrible feeling of like having to dance and not
slow
wanting
dance.
to. Yeah. So I remember the second song, we wanted Only You, but I can't remember what the band was, but they told us no.
Oh, really?
They're like, no way. So I remember we were on the sound stage and we had to plug a song in like last minute. And I'm just like, well, Time After Time is another song I feel that same way about. Throw it in. And fortunately they gave us the rights. But yeah, the soundtrack to like the other one that I thought, I think Jerusha is the one that recommended the When in Rome song at the end.
Oh, yeah.
Which I didn't even know about. Like I had no connection to it at all. But like now, every time I hear it when it plays on the radio, I'm just like, I just remember the film ending. Like it's like a really powerful song to me now.
Yeah, and even those interlude songs that were composed, I guess was that composed by somebody at BYU? Those sort of
no, that was
electronic.
John Swihart. He was a composer we found out of L.A.
Oh, okay. Was that before Sundance too? You had
We had all that stuff. Like he got the idea of like, oh, here's what we're looking to go for. It's just kind of like keyboard, like it's at the time it seemed like a very unique sound that we had a problem finding because we didn't want like a big orchestral.
Yeah.
Which worked. The what we wanted worked out well for our budget because it was like him a keyboard and occasionally some instruments.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I thought that was also a hugely unique part of the movie. And so then once it was picked up by Fox Searchlight, you knew you had wide scale distribution. Did they decide that it would have the bigger release of an independent film, or were they going to test it in some theaters, or what was that process like?
So the first step is they did a test screening in Simi Valley, California, that we went to, and it wasn't a disaster, but it was not good. Like
really?
It was not. I can't remember what the numbers were, but like it's kind of like Rotten Tomatoes. I think like you want like 60 or higher as like a minimum, and I think we hit like in like the low 50s.
Wow,
like,
really?
But which makes sense because anytime like these test screenings are awkward because people just like almost what they're familiar with. So if you give them something that's like different but they're not prepared for it, the first instinct is like, I don't like this. This is weird and different, and I don't get it. Which is kind of what the reaction was. So I think Fox got that, and they started doing these tastemaker screenings where they'd show the film for free with the idea that the more people saw it, the more they talk about it. So that was like kind of one of their strategies off that wasn't obvious. The other one was they're going to do a platform release that was planned. So we're going to open in 6 theaters. The following week we'll add some, but regardless of how the film performed, it was at least going to do like a month-long expansion up to, I think, to like 100 screens. And the film kept doing. Our opening weekend was not great. It wasn't terrible. I think we averaged like 6,000 a theater, 6 or 7,000, which was decent, but not like, didn't get really people excited. So the film had a slow burn for a long time in June, and then it started to catch fire, and then they had us go back the wedding scene at the end. I remember I had this feeling where I was completely done with the film. I had just delivered it. Like all of the nuts and bolts, paperwork, everything was done. And I got called in to an executive at Fox Searchlight's office, and he's like, we want you to go shoot a bonus scene that we can attach to the film when it goes wide. We want to do a wide release, and I think it was like July 24th. And we had, I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks, and like we had nothing scripted, nothing, like literally like nothing was done.
Jeez.
And I remember like not wanting to do it. So I submitted a budget that I thought at the time was like crazy. I submitted a budget for like 80 grand or something for this like 1 3-minute scene because I just didn't want to do it. And they said yes. And I'm like, crap, now we have to go do this.
Wow.
Yeah, but like Jared scripted it. We got out there, and like the whole wedding scene from beginning to end was like shot and in theaters in like 3 weeks.
Wow.
And that's back when we had to shoot on film, get it processed, developed, all that.
Because they decided within about 6 months that this was something we want to do wide release on after the testing.
It wasn't months, it was weeks. Because I mean, at this point, so you're talking it opens, I think June 4th I think it was 4th, and so by about 3-4 weeks into that, they're like, we want to go wide on July 24th.
Oh wow.
We want to do a scene somewhere between the end of June and July 24th, where it had to be attached to film prints going out.
Oh,
So,
wow.
and this is back in the day where you had like film prints that weighed, 50, 60 pounds, and they wanted to attach this to the end of it. So they had to like print all those up, which took time, which meant that, I think it was like 3 weeks for our end, from like us coming up with a concept to having like delivered to them to do with it. And it was, I think I've blocked a lot of it out of my memory, because I just remember like all of us were just exhausted, but we're like, we got to do this. And worked well for the film, because the idea was that people who had already seen it would go back when the film was wide to see the bonus scene and see it a multiple time and bring their friends with them, and it worked.
Mm-hmm. And then how many screens did they put it on, that extended
I think
release?
we peaked, I know it was over 1,000. I think we peaked at maybe just under 1,100,000, like 1,080 or something like that.
So all over the country, coast to
Yeah,
coast, basically.
any city in the country should be within 20 minutes of a place that was playing it.
Yeah. Then did they play it a lot longer than they had initially planned?
The film played forever. Like,
Yeah, it
I
seemed
mean,
like it was out forever. I remember watching it after I finally was like, I gotta see this. It was being talked about every single circle I go into, and so it was. Do you remember how long it ended up staying out?
so the DVD came out. So the film opened like early June. DVD came out at Christmas time that same year, and it was still in theaters.
Okay.
It wasn't playing a lot. I mean, it was still in. I mean, it was still playing into like 2015. So I mean, you're talking about 7-8 months.
And how many millions did it bring in? Do you know?
So it brought in a little over 44 million domestically. I think we did another like 1.5 million overseas. The film doesn't necessarily, it travels well in some areas. I remember like it did not travel well in Germany. They just did not
They didn't
get the
get it.
concept. And the German translation, I guess, isn't that amusing.
Well, it seems to me that it's unlike so many films you see, which represent the coastal regions, because that's where films get made, and New York or
Yeah.
L.A., that this really does a great job of representing more of the heartland of America. And so did they recognize that in the way it performed in theaters?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, well, the thing that surprised us the most about it is that younger people kind of took on to the film. Because when we made a movie for us as like 18 to 25, 26-year-olds. Mm-hmm. And I actually thought at the time, we never really talked about like, oh, is this a film for kids? I just never really thought about it. And my thinking was that there's no way that like someone in high school is going to find this amusing, because it's like you're in the petri dish. I don't think you're going to see the humor in your own. It just seems you're too close to the subject matter. And when we played Sundance, they had picked us to be one of the high school screening films. So we did one of our screenings was up at the Perry's Egyptian Theater up in Ogden for 1,000 high school students. And I went being like, this is probably not going to go well. And they like loved it. It was like, standing ovation, cheering. And I think because Fox Searchlight was at that screening too, because they'd already bought the movie. And they started thinking like, wow, we have a whole other market. We could go after this like, ideal younger market that sees movies all the time. And that's when MTV came in the pictures, that we can tap into that audience when Fox partnered with them.
Mm. And did you have any sort of deal where you earned royalties on the amount of box office sales it did, or
Yeah, and I mean we all. So as a company, a bunch of us on the production all own a piece of it. So I mean, everyone, as I said, everyone who worked on the film that shares in its profits made more off of this than we ever thought we ever would have made off of it. But
That's
we
awesome.
we continue to see checks every year from it.
That's great.
Yeah, so it's still 15 years later, it's still going.
That's awesome. Well, great. We'll take a little break, and when we get back, we're going to talk about how you can go out and see Napoleon Dynamite in theaters very soon for their 15-year anniversary, and you can also go and connect with some of the characters if you'd like. So that coming up next. This episode of the Utah Stories Show is sponsored in part by the Green Pig Pub. Located in the heart of downtown Salt Lake City, Green Pig Pub has this enormous rooftop patio where you can enjoy a big bacon burger, buffalo wings with fries. I love their chili verde nachos, chicken chinchoneros, and more. So be sure to check out thegreenpigpub.com for information on their live music shows as well as their trivia nights. It's really a great place to check out a game or enjoy a date out on the town. All right, and while you guys were going through all this, were you guys still a pretty tight-knit group of friends? Did you guys all hang out together, or was it to that point you guys kind of diverged in different directions? Or
No, we've always been friends. I mean, this is I feel like in many ways, like you have high school or college friends, like everyone kind of has families and kids, and you kind of separate. The thing for us is every time, like us, like us getting together for this 15th anniversary, it kind of pulls us all back together, and we're excited to get back together. Like, well, we're going to go out to dinner when people are here, but I don't think it's so much to be drifted. It's just life where people move to different cities.
You just get pulled in different directions. Right?
I mean, kids are the biggest bomb into like any kind of like friendships you have, I think, where like it's just I just had my first kid like 2 years ago, and I'm like I'm the last of like all that group of friends to have kids. And I'm like, because Jerusha was like 6 or 7 months pregnant when we shot the movie, and I have a whole new appreciation for like what, and like their kid was born during editing.
Wow.
Yeah, I just have a whole new appreciation for that.
Yeah, and so, tell me what I know. You've worked on a lot of different projects now. What do you think has been the most interesting project you've done since Napoleon Dynamite?
The one I had most fun. So I started shifting towards documentaries because they're, I think it's a hot market for them right now. And also, I like something about the idea you can go make a documentary with like literally 2 or 3 people. Mm-hmm. It's impossible to do any kind of narrative film. You have to have a crew, even the smallest like single location, you have to have at least 10, 15 people to make a movie. So I did this documentary called Raiders about these kids that did a shot-for-shot remake of Raiders of the Lost Ark in the 80s from age 11 to 18. And Spielberg ended up seeing it, and they have this whole following.
They reshot in the entire Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Yeah, it's on Netflix if anyone wants to watch it.
Man,
but I made that.
Awesome.
That was 3-4 years ago. I mean, clearly Napoleon's going to be like the best thing any of us have ever done, I think, for the most part, unless we get really lucky. But Raiders is a second for me because it was something where I went to a screening where they showed so they call it Raiders Lost Ark, the adaptation. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was a myth. I didn't think it ever existed because you couldn't find it online. And that's because they always pulled it offline so you couldn't find it. And I went to the screening, and one of the guys was there. It was at the Tumbleweeds Film Festival in like 2014. And about 20 minutes in, I'm like, this is insane. I got to talk to this guy. They have like fire scenes and like, it's incredible. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it because these kids are doing stuff that they should have died, and they just stuck with it till they finished it. They took them 7 summers to do it all. So like and they shot it out of order, so like their ages bump around that whole time, and sometimes they're fat, sometimes they're tall. Like it's hilarious in this like kid way. But we did a documentary on their story. There's a great book by Alan Eisenstock called Raiders, the story of the greatest fan film ever made, which is what the name of the documentary is.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And then we pulled up the trailer for Sasquatch.
Yeah. Sasquatch game.
Yeah, that was actually.
After Napoleon Dynamite.
Yeah, we did that right afterwards. We tapped
You
in.
got on working on that as soon as Napoleon Dynamite was probably done, right?
I actually took a break. Stupidly, I was just like, I'm 24. I'm just going to take a break. So I remember like we did the film 2004, came out summer 2004. Then I took like 6 months off, and then Sasquatch. Tim Skousen, who was our first AD on Napoleon, is also a really good director. And he passed me the script, and I'm like, oh, this sounds really fun. Let's go do this. And so we shot that, the following summer of 06. But it was, Sasquatch was a fun one, too. We shot that in Oregon.
Yeah, it looks like it had some cool scenes in it, and I wasn't aware of it. Drew pointed it out to me. It's just
I don't think Justin Long was a huge star, was he?
No, he started, he became the Apple guy,
yeah.
like, I think like 6 months after we shot it.
The really awesome movie he was in that I just love is Idiocracy, and
Yeah.
I don't know what year that was. Probably 2006
That was,
or
that was
something.
06. I actually saw that in the theater twice.
Did you?
Despite,
That's my right up there with Napoleon Dynamite.
well,
One of my favorite
Idiocracy is
movies.
this crazy film. 'Cause I never understood. Mike Judge had to have ticked someone off at Fox because like that film literally does not have a trailer. It was contractually, I think it had to be released in like 100 theaters, and it was released in theaters with like zero marketing.
Yeah, I don't remember it in theaters at all.
Yeah, I was living in LA, and I was walking through, and I'm like, because oddly enough, John Heder had read for Idiocracy for the lead role,
Oh, really?
played by which Wilson brother? Is it Luke Wilson?
Luke Wilson, yeah.
Yeah, John read for it and was in the mix. It was called 3000 AD, I think then. But like John was living with me, and I remember the script came around. I was like, oh, this Mike Judge is awesome. This sounds great. And then, yeah, like years later, the film's just like dumped in theaters for a weekend, and it's a total classic.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's kind of I mean, what do you think about the after now? I mean, you've had a career both in Hollywood. I guess you're based out of Utah, but you probably go to Hollywood all the time, right? With all your different projects and things like
Yeah,
that.
as needed. I think
I mean,
it used to be. I lived in LA for 6 years, so I have a bunch of connections there. With the way things are now, a lot of stuff's just remote, like between
you don't
phone
have to
calls
go
and
down
emails.
there. You just
Yeah, you oddly enough, you don't have to go, and a lot of times stuff's not shot in LA, at least the projects I've done. So you're traveling anyway to go to shoot something in New York or wherever, especially on like documentary type stuff. But I mean, my 20s in LA, I wouldn't trade for anything. Like it was a great time to kind of just. I don't really ever want to go back or live there, but it's like not a part of my. It was a great time, but I can't ever recreate that.
well,
time.
how can you describe that? You were born and raised in Utah? Or
I was
you-
born and raised in Texas. I was from Dallas
Texas.
originally.
Oh, so you didn't live inside the Utah bubble, the Utah Provo.
No, I
BYU
lived there,
bubble.
and like I did not like it. Like I mean, Provo has its own bubble that. I mean, unless you're going to school there, I would not spend much time in Provo. I mean, I don't know how much of your audience is from Provo, so I don't want to alienate them.
Probably
but-
not a lot. We had some kids on the show from Provo, and we
Yeah.
talked about the Utah bubble. And there was a girl, and I said, "Yeah, you got the strong Utah accent." And she's like, "What?
Yeah.
What's that? I don't have that." And I was like, "You're still in the bubble. You're living in
Yeah,
it."
once you kind of cross the Utah County line, it's different. Yeah, Salt Lake. I never thought I'd live in Salt Lake actually, and I mean, I've been here now almost 10 years, and like it's great. Like I feel that culturally, I think the city's. I don't know if I'd go as far as say it's diverse. I mean, it's not like LA or anything like that, but I do think there's. It's starting to average out where there's more diverse thoughts and opinions, and like those are welcome. And yeah,
What made you
just,
want to live in Salt Lake?
What was that?
What made you want to live here?
I married my wife, who's a lawyer, and didn't want to take the bar outside of Utah.
Oh, really?
That was initially what started. I was like, well, if we're gonna do this, we're not moving to California, because my goal was to move. I moved here to go to MBA school, and then I was gonna move back. And yeah, we met. I'm like, well. Salt Lake's not so bad. I like this. Let's ride this out.
Actually, you go to other places and you visit and you see what the culture's like, and it just seems I live in the bubble. I admit it. I mean, I've been here my whole life. I've spent 1 year in UK, but that's it. But you go to other places and you're just kind of a little bit shell shocked by how different the outside world is, and I imagine LA. that's probably cool at first to see that it's that way, but then eventually do you just kind of get tired of that scene and the way people are? And
Yeah, you get really materialistic where you like care what you drive. Like which fine when you're like 27. I think I left when I was 27 or 28. But when you start getting to the point where like, if you want to get married, you want to have kids, you want to own a home, like that's out of reach for most people in LA. Like, I mean, you're talking about homes. I mean, your garbage homes are still going to cost, close to $1 million in the good parts of town. That's the part I found kind of depressing. And you're also shelling out, $2,000-$3,000 for an apartment a month, which I mean, here you can buy a house, have a mortgage payment half that easily.
yeah, just insane amounts of money going out to just live in have a roof over your head.
Yeah, I just like I also feel like the people here are more real. It's just you have a bunch of ski resorts all within 20 minutes. One night the snow does get kind of tiresome, so we have like a harsh winter. I hate clearing my driveway, but other than that,
it's been a long winter, man.
Yeah.
And so you're the way your career has gone is you focused on comedies and narratives, and now you decided you like documentaries better, and you've been a producer throughout and also an editor for most of the works you've done.
Yeah, so I mean, editing takes, like when you edit, that's all I would do. So like I cut Napoleon and I cut Sasquatch, and like I'll pitch it on some stuff, but it's much nicer to like hire an editor and then just be able to kind of chime in. Yeah, I love giving notes more so than taking notes and having to go edit.
Yeah, editing is a long, drawn out process.
Yeah, so like we started a company called the September Club. Are you guys fans of American Movie at all? That documentary?
I've heard about that many times. I have not.
Check it out. It's my favorite documentary. But the editor of that cut was the editor on our Raiders documentary, and he and I got along really well. And we realized when he was cutting Raiders for us, there isn't like a place to go to like have your documentary cut by a team, because the weird thing about documentaries is that you have, like on Raiders, you probably have 300 or 400 hours of footage and have some idea what the story is, but we don't really know. So you take all that footage and cull it into a movie, whereas on a narrative, you have a script you can follow, and like your shooting ratio is, 10 or 20 to 1. Like on Napoleon, it was 10 to 1 because that's all the money we had because we're shooting on film. So it's a totally different beast. Even if, like on a documentary and you have that much footage, no one person has seen all the footage because it would take them months just to watch it.
And what's your process for breaking that down and getting through that?
Yeah, so that's the thing. We worked on Raiders with them. I was like, we need to replicate this on other projects that we like. So you have 500 hours come in. We have a team go through that of like 5 or 6 editors, and they cull it down to 10% of that. So it's like 10% of what we think is usable or good. And you just keep diluting it down till it's the best stuff. So, if you have 500 hours, you might have 50 hours of like selects, and then you do that again and you get it down to like a 5 or 6 hour cut. And at that point you bring in the director and you're like, look, here's all the Legos you have that we think are good. What kind of story can we build out of this? Like, we have our ideas with this, but like once you have the idea of what blocks you have to play with, you can kind of decide what you're going to build.
Yeah, that seems like a really difficult process.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about the 15-year anniversary and what you guys have planned to do with the film and your upcoming event. So it's East High School, and it's happening Friday,
May 3rd.
Friday, May 3rd. And so we know for sure you and Jared Jerusha and Aaron Rule, who's Kip, are coming for sure.
Yeah, and then for sure Ephraim Ramirez, who plays Pedro, John Heater, who plays Napoleon, Tina Majorina, who plays Deb, was going to come, but she had a scheduling conflict with another project she's working on. And if all things worked out, we'll also have Uncle Rico there, John Grice, my favorite character.
Yeah, he's amazing. And his career took off, didn't it, as an actor?
Well, he had like a second. I mean, he's been around forever.
Yeah.
I mean, he is. I remember like the only thing I knew him that he was in was he's like Laszlo Holyfield in Real Genius. He's the guy in the closet.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
He had hair then.
Yeah.
But he's been around in a ton of stuff. I mean, he had done that, and I had just seen The Rock had some action movie with Christopher Walken in it that John actually plays a fairly significant role. Can't remember what it is.
Yeah, you see him pop up. His face pops up in all sorts of Hollywood productions.
Yeah, well, there's a funny story about him. So he was friends with Randy Jackson from American Idol. Like they've known each other for years.
Mm-hmm.
And he was at a dinner with it was probably like 15 people there that Randy Jackson was hosting. And Randy kept telling everyone, like, you got to go see Napoleon Dynamite. It's hilarious, blah, blah, blah. Kept going on. And Randy Jackson didn't realize that John Grice was Uncle Rico. As he's telling him, like, you got to see Napoleon Dynamite. He's like, you know I'm in that, right? And he's like, no. He's like, I'm Uncle Rico. He's like, oh, because without the wig, he looks totally different. Like,
Really?
it's crazy. Like, people don't recognize him when he's bald.
Yeah, he definitely is a strong character actor, and he can play. He has a pretty wide range.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah, and so the impetus for this screening at East High School, what brought that all about? That you guys wanted to get together and do this?
So I think we'd always be up for it. The main impetus for it was that the Utah Film Center does an annual fundraiser every year, and I'm on their board, and I've been a huge fan of them because they always bring filmmakers to town that otherwise wouldn't be able to come here, and the events are always free for locals. And they really curate the best content because a lot of films and filmmakers just otherwise wouldn't stop out in Salt Lake because we're not New York or LA. So do that. We also have like an education arm and they have the Artist Foundry, which supports local filmmakers here as well. So they do an annual fundraiser every year. They usually do a big giant gala, and they talked about doing something with Napoleon. I'm like, we're gonna do it with Napoleon. We got to do it fits the topic, so we got to do it like a high school. We got to have it be like a fun family type thing. So that was kind of the impetus for it. And then like I got on the phone and talked to all the cast, and everyone's like, hey, we'd love to help you and Jared out. When do we need to be there, and what can we do?
Cool.
Yeah, so we're gonna have a lot of fun stuff. We're gonna have a bunch of memorabilia from the film. We have costumes like Deb's prom dress. We should have the time machine will be there.
Oh, nice.
I'm having that shipped in from LA from our production designer. And then you have two options for the screening. You have a VIP meet and greet if you're a big Napoleon fan. You can get a photo op with all the cast that's there and get to meet them for a couple of minutes. On the general admission you have as well. And then so the general admission will get access to all the memorabilia, see all that, and then we're also going to do about a 45-minute Q&A at the end.
Nice. So how can people get tickets to that?
So you can go to utahfilmcenter.org. That's the easiest. Or if you just want to Google, I've tested this. If you Google Napoleon Dynamite 15th anniversary and you're in Utah, it should be the first thing that pops up on Google.
Okay.
So we're getting our...
That's easy. Napoleon Dynamite 15th anniversary and Google or Utah Film Center. And the tickets are $50 for general admission?
50 and then $150. It's also tax deductible since it's all going to charity.
Nice.
If that helps at all. But yeah, we want to... we definitely want to have a strong showing. I don't think we're going to be doing something like this for... This will be the best Napoleon Dynamite screening probably since we premiered Sundance with like this many people here.
Yeah, that sounds exciting. That sounds awesome. So anybody who loves it, your tickets are probably moving fast already. So
yeah.
I'm sure you got to get up and get moving. And I think that's probably a good place to leave it. What's just out of curiosity? So what's your current projects you're working on right now?
I have this weird one that I seem to read articles and then be like, this will make a great documentary. So I don't know if you've heard. There's this guy that has the only known recording of the first Super Bowl broadcast from 1967. And he's in this battle with the NFL over it because the NFL does not. So it aired on NBC and CBS. No one bothered to archive it.
Jeez.
So it was lost.
Wow.
So this guy's dad recorded it on quadruplex tapes for some random reason and stuck it up in his attic. And for years, it was thought lost forever. Sports Illustrated had an article that came out saying like, hey, if anyone, it was like 25 lost sports treasures, and one of them was a recording of the first Super Bowl. And this guy's like, wait, I think I have that upstairs. Got it transferred, and it's there. And the NFL, being the jerks that they are, instead of, he's like, went to him, was like, hey, you guys want to buy this? You guys, want to have this for your archives? And the NFL's like, we'll give you $30,000. And he's like, well, no, this has got to be more valuable than this. And the NFL's like, well, scratch that. We're going to give you nothing, and if you do anything with it, we'll sue you. And that was 10 years ago.
How lame.
So I read this, and I'm like, oh, that'd be fun just to kind of like poke the NFL.
Yeah.
So we've shot a fair amount of it. I'm just kind of playing this waiting game of like when we actually just tick off the NFL and like fire a bullet at them. We've had conversations with them, and they act exactly how you would expect them to act, like just not reasonable.
Really? Wow.
So hopefully, I don't know what the future of that doc is, but yeah, we have about half of it shot. We have 2/3 of a film. We got to figure out what we're gonna do with the recording.
Wow.
Because
because he could put it on pay-per-view, or I mean, couldn't he do something with it? I'm sure he'll get sued. But
yeah, that's the fear of it. But also, like if they get, oddly enough, if the NFL sues, it's better for us as a documentary.
yeah, that would make an interesting.
So we got to
plot twist.
figure out what to do with it. But yeah, in the meantime, like at our company, we have tons of like docs that we're working on that we're excited about, and it's fun to be on the post-production end of it because I think the production of it is where a lot of stress and time goes.
Mm-hmm.
But the Super Bowl one's the one that I'm personally most invested in. Might take a couple more years.
Yeah, well, that sounds cool. All right, well, thanks for being on the program. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
I used to put my faith in worship, but then my chance to get to heaven slim. I used to worry about the future, but then I threw my caution to the wind. I had no reason to be careful.
Thanks for watching the Utah Stories Show. My name's Rich Markosian. If you want to help this show succeed, spread, and grow, you can do it in one of three ways. First of all, you can go to utahstories.com and subscribe to our e-newsletter. You'll see the link at the bottom of the page. The other way you can do it is subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or YouTube. And be sure to, if you do it on YouTube, click on the little bell icon so that you're alerted every time a new podcast comes out. The other way you can support the show is just share it with a couple of friends. This episode in particular, I think, was one of our best. It's what we want to do more of. And the only way we will get the momentum we need and the support is by you sharing the episode. So thanks again for watching. Appreciate it. Like this and give us 5 stars on iTunes. And I'll see you next time.